Hi guys, this is Sai Kumar Kurtivada. In this video, we will learn about use callback and what is the purpose of use callback. So what we'll learn in this video. Let me quickly jump into another slide and explain you what we are going to cover in this video. So first thing is what is use callback and how to use this particular use callback and how it exactly helps us to reduce re-renderings. Actually speaking, use callback is mainly used for performance related stuff, and we can increase the performance of our application by using use callback, and we can also use this use callback and how exactly it works in React. I'll show you in this video. Let me quickly jump into Visual Studio Code where we'll try to do some sample example. So now, for example, I'll go with a small example where you will be creating some set of random number and the counter, the same example where I shown in the previous video as well. Try to see the previous video where I'm using use memo and how exactly it works. Here it will be little bit different one where you can use a callback. So now what I'll do is I'll create a random number, and I'm using a setter method called as set random number, and I'm using a use state, and the state is of 0 value. And now let me go with a const again, and I'll go with a counter value and set counter value. So now I'll use state of 0 again. So now what I can do here is you have this random number and setting a random number. What I'll do, I'll just use one h1 tag where I want to show this counter value, and the counter value will be something like this. And in the same way, I want to show a random number. So let me go with a random number, and I want to show the random number here. So let me copy this random number, put it over here, save this. Now I have two things, one is counter and one is random number. Let me make it as 4 so that it will be looking good. So let me go here 4 and 4, save this. Now I want to update this counter value and random number by using some external files or components. So what I'll do is I'll create two components. One is counter.js, and I'll be creating a functional component by using a snippet rfce, and then I'll go with one more component called as random.js, and here also rfce. So I have created two components, one is random component and one is counter component. I want to inject this in my application. So now I want to go with a counter value. So let me use and inject this counter component, and I'll also inject the random component. So this is my random component, and save this. Now what this counter and random should do is it should accept props. So let me accept the props, and it should have only one button. Let me use a button, and this will help us to update the counter value in the parent. So I am sending an event from my child component to my parent component, and I have explained how to pass that and how to call the parent methods from child in my previous videos. Please watch that as well for better understanding. Here what I'll receive is I'll receive the prop, and by using that props I'll call some method. So let it be for now. Now let me go and create the same button here as well for random. So this one is for updating the random number, but my state, actual state and updated value is showing in my parent component. So first what I'll do is I'll create two methods. Const update random number is equal to, this is a callback function. So what this callback function will do is it will use set random number of, I want to update this value with random number. So I can use math.random. This is one scenario where I can update the state. Why I am not sending this method to the child component? It is always not recommended to use the same state in other component, and don't pass the state as a prop. Create some method which will help us to call from child components and updates the current state. So this is how the current state will be updating by using the set random state. So that is nothing but a setter method of that particular state. And I have one more thing called as update counter as well. So this counter, what it does is it updates my counter value. Set counter of counter plus 1. So I'm taking the previous counter value, I'm just updating the counter value. So now I want to utilize this particular methods and call these methods from my child component. To call some methods from child to parent, first we have to send these methods as a props. So what I'll do is I'll just send this as a prop. So what I'll do, I'll just copy this update random number and put it over here. I'll send the same as prop, and I'll pick update counter. I'll send same as prop and save this. Now it will be sent to my child components. So here is my child component. What I'll do is I'll just receive the props, and whenever the user clicks on update counter, I'll try to call the method which is passed as a prop to my counter value. This is update counter. So let me call this update counter and save this. Same thing I'll use on click, but here inside the random, it is receiving some other prop, and that is nothing but props dot update random number. Copy this and put it over here. So when I click on update random number, it will call this particular method, and when I click on update counter, this will be called. Let me use console.log of. I'll pass something like random number method. So this is a method, so I'm using random number method. Let me copy this and put it over here. It is counter method. So I have two methods which will be called on clicking on a particular button. So let me go back, and now this counter and this random number are at parent. This update counter and this update random are two different components. So let me click on update random. So random number method is called, that is fine. And when I click on update counter, counter method is also fine. What I'll do is I'll try to write the consoles inside our components. How many times it is trying to render? Let's see. Console.log of. This is my counter component, and copy the same, put it over here, and this is my random component. Save this and save this. Let me go back, clear this off and reload. Now what happens, let's see. So let me click on update counter. So when I clicked on the update counter, so counter method is called, counter component is re-rendered, and random component is also getting re-rendered. Why it has to re-render? There is no use of re-rendering these cases. Why? Because whenever I am passing the data to my child component, that child component does not have any of the state. It doesn't have the counter value, it doesn't have the random number. It has only two callback functions. Even when that callback functions we are passing to the child, the updations are happening in the parent. Why the child component should re-render? It is not required. So let's assume to fix this, we'll go with a memo. So what we'll do is memo component, that is pure component. Let's try to make this as a pure component. Already I have explained all about pure component in my previous video. Please watch that as well. So this is a memo, so that the counter value will become pure component. So whenever there is an updates in the props or states, then only this component will be called. So let me go here again. I'll use a memo over here, and let me go and place this memo. So now as per our assumption, it should not call. But what's happening? Let me go here, clear this off, refresh and clear this off. When I click on update counter, still the counter method is called and the components are re-rendered. If my component is having one or two lines, that's fine. But if my component is having more than two lines or more than 5 lines or different types of logics which are getting executed in that particular component, it takes time, and that creates the performance issues. So why this is happening? Let's try to understand the problem. The problem here is, when I use memo will help us to avoid the re-renders whenever there is no update in the props. But what is getting updated here? Let me go here. So we are sending update counter and update random number as a prop to my child. So whenever we are sending directly the methods are getting re-rendered and reinitiated, and they are sent to the child component. That means when I update the counter, again this method is getting as a new instance and it is passed to the counter. So there is an update as per memo. And if you are seeing the random number, it is also like whenever I am updating the random number, immediately this method and this method, they are creating a new instance and they are passing to the child component. Hence, whenever it receives the new instance, automatically the component, even it is in memo, it treats like there is some change in the props and it gets updated. So that is what happening here. So it is receiving some counter and the counter method is getting reinstantiated, and hence you are getting this problem. So how to avoid this? To avoid this, we came across one of the hook called as useCallback. So useCallback help us to create instance only once and send that to our child components. So how we can use that? For example, if you want to create a use callback, you can create use callback like this, and it takes two parameters. First parameter is the callback function and second parameter is the dependency. So dependency, do we have any dependencies? No. You are seeing set random number, but random number was set by math.random. So there is no state update required in this. So I'm just using empty. Now for this, there is a dependency called as counter state. So now what I'll do, I'll use callback again, but this time I'll not use empty array, that is the listener. The listener should be counter because it is having a dependency. So let me save this. If you don't put this counter, let me save this, go to the console, you will see React hook use callback has missing dependency, and that missing dependency is a counter dependency, because you can see here there is a counter and that counter is not listened by this callback. So that's why it is giving you a warning. Please put your counter which is a dependent for this particular callback. Let me save this, and error gone. Let me close this, go here, and now let me refresh. Now let me click on update counter. Only the counter method has been called and the counter component is getting re-rendered. And now what I'll do is, let me click on random number. So random number method is called, but if you observe, you are not passing any of the update counter value. So that means if you are using a random number, inside the random number we are not giving any updates of the random number. That's why it is not called. But in the counter, you are updating the counter value as well. So hence this gets re-rendered. Whenever this gets re-rendered, the component or a particular component which is already changed, that particular component will get re-rendered. In this case, it is treating the counter is getting updated, and hence it is calling this particular counter component. And here we are not using the previous state. Hence, whenever we are updating that previous state, that is not re-rendered. For example, if I keep this as random number over here, save this and go here, now the component will call even for random. Let me refresh. Update counter, counter method, counter component. Let me click on this. You can see random number, random component. So whenever there is an update in the random component, or if we are adding any state as a dependency, then that particular components will be called, and only the specific components for that callbacks will be called. And that is why whenever you are using number of components, if you are passing a method as a parameter or a prop to the child component, it is always recommended to use callback. So this is as per React 18, but as per React 19, which is coming in the future, and now it is in the beta version, so where you no need to use this callback itself. Use callback can be used from 16 to 18, and after that if you are trying to use it also, it is not needed. Why? Because if you are using a callback function, it is performative, that is fine, but even that is handled by React itself. So no need to explicitly mention this is a callback function. So that's how you can use callback. So use callback if you are working from 16 to 18 versions, then you have to use manually. If you are going with 19, that will not be a problem. But we have to see what are the side effects which it causes, or how it exactly performs. We don't know because it is still in beta version. Let's see, once the version is released, we will update this particular callback things in our application. So that's about your use callback. That's it for this video. Hope you like my explanation. If you like my video, like, share, subscribe to my channel for more updates. Signing off. Thank you.